All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushua, by Hashem Mechak Badash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of Great Millstone. I'm your brother, Rabbi Knapp, coming out with a lesson, Lord's will. This is edifying to the Lord's elect. I found this online on KJRH. It says Super Bowl can bring increased human trafficking risks. Expert warn. Tulsa, Oklahoma anti-trafficking advocates raised awareness about a darker reality around major sporting events, the increased risk of human trafficking. Local experts warn that large-scale events create conditions that traffickers exploit. These big events draw more attention and they drive more fuel for the demand because you've got people drinking, doing drugs, partying, celebrating, said Kristen Wise, co-founder and CEO of the Demand Project. Wise started fighting human trafficking more than 2 decades ago. As CEO of the Demand Project, she said major sporting events create the perfect storm for traffickers. Bad guys are looking for kids to use as products in their celebrations, as if that's what they get as a prize in the celebration, Wise said. Janae Swan is a survivor who was trafficked by an international drug cartel. I was deep in a hopeless methamphetamine addiction, and that led me to be extremely vulnerable, and we know that traffickers pick on vulnerable people, Swan said. So, you got to be careful of any event you go to. It's not just football, but clearly, more people are going to be drunk. You're more prone, to be in that state of being drunk as hell. Like, you people don't know where you're at, man. This world ain't what you think it is, man. People think this world's sweet. Everyone loves you and all that, man. You gotta be on your toes, man. Your P's and Q's, as they say. Let me grab this in Ephesians 5, verse 15. In the Blue Letter Bible. Let's see what this is talking about. Ephesians 5, verse 15. As a matter of fact, let me grab it here first. In the KJV, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Let's see what this is talking about. Pay careful attention then to how you walk. This phrase emphasizes the importance of vigilance and intentionality in the Christian life. The metaphor of walking is frequently used in scripture to describe one's conduct or way of life. Genesis 5, verse 24, Micah 6 and 8. Let me go there real quick, see what that's talking about. Yeah, man, your conduct got to be aligned with the Lord. Okay, Genesis 5, verse 24, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Okay, so he walked with the Lord. So in the eyes of the Lord, he was being obedient. He wasn't dealing with Enoch because he was being disobedient. Okay, the world was evil. You read the next chapter, Lord took him away before all of that. So in the eyes of the Lord, he was pleased with him. And Enoch is a representation of the elect. The elect are going to be pleasing in the sight of the Lord. And he's going to take them up too into the chariot. And it's giving me Micah 6 and 8. So he's a perfect example of being righteous in the eyes of the Lord. It says what God requires of man. Let's start at Micah 6 and 6. Wherewith shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before the high God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves of a year old? Yes, shall you come out with the Lord with animal sacrifices? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams or with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? So you sacrifice your kid? Is that what the God requires of you? Or thousands of rams, multiple sacrifices? It tells you in, I believe it's 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter, where he told Saul, I'd rather obedience than sacrifice. When King Saul went off, he gave him a commandment, and he didn't do it. 1 Samuel 15, verse 22. And Samuel said, have the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. So it's better for you to obey the Lord than to sacrifice. In that time you would have animal sacrifice. In this time, even your prayers and things like that are also another form of a sacrifice. They're not going to be answered if you're not being obedient. So it's better for you to be obedient than to sacrifice to the Lord. It says, in the cultural context of the first century Greco-Roman world, walking was a common mode of transportation, symbolizing a journey or path. The call to pay careful attention suggests a need for discernment and mindfulness. Let's look at this word discernment, because this is a very important word people need to understand, especially in this time, man. If you think everybody's your friend and you're out of your damn mind, man. You really are, man. You don't understand. You live in it's just like the wilderness. Things can bite you. You got to be aware of what the conditions of the terrain you're walking upon. Discernment is keen ability to perceive, understand, and judge situations or information clearly, separating truth from error and identifying what is not obvious. So if you have a methamphetamine addiction, your discernment is low. And then you're outside, she got kidnapped by a drug cartel, and she's easy prey because she's not walking within the confines of the Lord. So the Lord's not defending her by giving her wisdom. Discernment is a gift from the Lord, just like wisdom is, and faith. All these things that come from the Lord. If he increases your discernment, that's because the Lord wants you to move a certain way. When you're around certain people, you feel things, and your brain should be telling you certain things. If you operate under the law, statutes, and commandments, you're going to know when somebody else isn't, because the way they move. They can act like they are, but their actions, you judge a tree by its fruit. That's how you know what kind of tree it is. Like it tells you in the book of Matthew. These are things that the Lord wants us to apply. He's not giving us this wisdom to boast about knowing this. No, you got to apply these things. He's going to put you into situations where you can actually apply the scriptures. Matthew 7, verse 15. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. So a corrupt tree will bring forth evil fruit. What's a form of evil fruit? Someone who talks behind your back. He might even not be talking behind your back about you. He could be talking to you about somebody else behind their back. That's still evil fruit. Okay? But then when he's around the person he's talking shit about, he's cool all of a sudden. You got to see that. He's showing you who he is. And that's not to be looked upon and ignored. That's how you judge a tree, by the fruit it produces. Matthew 7, verse 18, a good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit. Neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. So if a good tree can't bring forth evil fruit, then then something's up. Neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. So the Lord ain't write that for no reason. Okay? If they're bringing some form of corruption, if they're doing things that are not contrary to the Bible, to the doctrine that they were taught, you need to start applying these scriptures. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. So Yahweh Shah is telling us, he's basically talking about discernment here. Okay, if you're doing drugs and things like that, that's not using your discernment. And mindfulness, echoing Proverbs 4, 26 through 27. Let's go there. Proverbs 4, 26. Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil. So you want to be established in this truth. When you ponder in the path of your feet, you're going to need a guideline. Okay? Okay. It tells you in, it's in the book of Psalms. I'm thinking 106 for some reason. Psalm 106. Nope, Psalm 119 and 105. It says, None, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. So this word is a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path. This world is gross darkness. If you drunk in a dark world, you're more prone to go the wrong direction. But if you have a light, you can see. Okay, I'm doing something. This is wrong, man. I need to fix that. And then you can move according to the way the Lord wants you to move. And it damn sure ain't taking methamphetamine addictions and things like that. Swan said she escaped by moving states in the middle of the night, but the trauma lasted years. Vulnerable people become more vulnerable when there are more people around. And so if there's a way to make money fast, the vulnerable people are going to try and do that. Swan said, yeah, let me give this chick 20. Yeah, you want to make $20 real quick? And then next thing you know, you kidnap. Okay, if you're that weak, that's very vulnerable. But there's different stages to it. That trafficking shit's more sophisticated than, this is a low level, she's drunk and high. She probably would have did something strange for some change for free. She just happened to get kidnapped. But she was able to make it out of there. Some of y'all, it's even more sophisticated than that. You might be on a family trip with your family in Disney World. Disney World getting people missing over there, man. But you gotta go see Mickey Mouse. This is why you wanna have discernment. Okay, in preparation for big events, we work with other nonprofits, and we are all on the lookout and on standby. We're basically kind of an ER where you're on call in case a major catastrophe happens, why I said. Joseph Sacramucci with Skull Games told 2 News his organization provides analytical support to law enforcement task forces working the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl, they had all types of celebrities there, a bunch of these people who, Hollywood elites are over there. These people are implicated in the Epstein's files. Okay? And they're not being brought to justice. But yet you in the same location as them. So if the Lord led you there, it's probably because he wants you to get picked up. Okay, he's not, if you ain't dealing with wisdom, then, you're going to be, other world, making yourself an enemy to God. He might send you to a Travis Scott concert so you can get crushed. Okay, he's not dealing with these people. He's not dealing with these events. If you ain't walking under the law, statutes, and commandments, or seeking the Lord, especially in this time, you eventually gonna find you. It might not be at the concert. He might get you some other time. The Lord's long suffering, but you could fall into a trap, and he might not do. You might be human trafficking for something else. There's organ harvesting. These are actual things in this world, man. And if you got that mindset, oh, I just love everybody so much. Everyone with a Jesus piece is just my brother in Christ. You're going to die. Okay? That's how a lamb ends up on somebody's plate. You got cannibals out here, people who drink blood, people who do all types of crazy things with kids. This is what he's showing you, this is what he's about. And people are being implicated at a very high level. So you got to know where you're at in these times. This ain't the time to really be playing like that. It's an excellent time for awareness, and there is more targeted response to human trafficking. And so, undoubtedly, there will be task forces working the Super Bowl. Sacramucci said, yeah, I don't care if you got a badge. That shit don't mean nothing. Half these people are protecting these motherfuckers, man. You wake up every day, the news ain't even, they can't even fix the debt that they're in. This is all bullshit. Okay? All these different situations that are going on in the world, and you look at the talking points. Like, none of it's getting to a solution to all the world's problems. They're just there. It's a placeholder. Okay? And you need to be operating in wisdom. Because ain't nobody, according to the Bible. Now, no one's going to tell you about the Bible. No one really, this is a godless world, man. I'm not going to tell you to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. But that's why he destroys you. That's why he, that's what makes you a transgressor. And Edom puts a lot of traps in the world where you fall into it. It's like you walk into it to yourself. So you need this light in order to navigate these snares and traps of the devil. Let me grab this in 2 Corinthians 11. Second Corinthians 11. And what am I thinking about? When Satan can get an advantage. Satan advantage. I forgot where that's at. 2 Corinthians 2 and 11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So we're not ignorant of his devices. When I was watching some of the Super Bowls, watching, I think his name is Donut, and he be doing conspiracy theories and things like that, going into different numbers and different signs and stuff. It sounds far-fetched shit that he's getting into, but he's been doing this a long time, and he's basically saying that all that shit's like a full-blown ritual. It's all a ritual, man. Who knows what the hell happened today? But the point I'm trying to make is you don't want to be a part of it. It's a difference between being at home in the comfort of your house. You ain't even safe there. But if the Lord got a hedge about you, then you ain't got to worry about these things. It says, for survivors like Swan, the awareness these events brings is crucial. I'm so grateful that things like the Super Bowl bring awareness to it, because we're looking at it every single day. Why I said the work doesn't end when the game does. It's a lifetime of healing once you've been a victim of human trafficking. Why I said, yeah, if you get to leave. That's not always promised. Not everyone makes it out of there. Which advises careful consideration of one's path. This vigilance is necessary because the surrounding culture often promotes values contrary to Christian teachings. That's right. This world is contrary to Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai. Not as unwise, but as wise. The contrast between wisdom and folly is a recurring theme in biblical literature, particularly in the wisdom books like Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Wisdom in a biblical sense is not merely intellectual knowledge, but a practical application of God's truth in daily life. So you got to apply what you know. A lot of people, you might know something and don't apply it. That's not wisdom. James 1 verse 5, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given. So given him, so he'll give it to you. You got to ask him for it. Encourages believers to seek wisdom from God, who gives generously. In the historical context of Ephesus, a city known for its diverse religious practices and philosophical schools, the call to live wisely would have been particularly poignant. What's this poignant mean? Poignant, evoking a keenly felt sense of emotion, especially of bittersweet sadness or regret. A sharp, pungent in taste or smell, saddening, sad, moving, touching, pitiful. The wisdom referred to here aligns with the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom, Proverbs 9 and 10. I normally go to Proverbs 1 and 7, but let's see what Proverbs 9 and 10. But it's all throughout the scriptures. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding, right? That's the same thing. Proverbs 1 verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So it's pretty much saying the same thing, but that fear of the Lord is the most important part of it all. That's where you get the wisdom from. Understanding that there's a power that's judging in the world will keep you walking a certain way. If you understand that, okay, all of these actions that are happening in the world, the Lord is ordaining these things to happen. How can I avoid putting myself in a position to be destroyed in his world? Well, he tells you to keep his law, statutes, and commandments and fear him. He knows if you fear him or not. Okay, but it says fools despise wisdom and instruction, and that's why they fall into the snares of the devil. That's what he's created to do, man. Have thou considered my servant Job? You know, he did it to the righteous. Don't think he won't do it to the wicked. And it is ultimately embodied in Yahweh Shah HaMashiach, who is described as the wisdom of God, 1 Corinthians 1 verse 24. Yeah, he's the word. He comes in the volume on the book. 1 Corinthians 1 verse 24, but unto them that are which are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. That's right. Comes into he's the volume of the book. So you got to eat the whole roll. But a lot of y'all can't do that. What's this? Super Bowl, I'm done with that. It says, will the real Kevin Warsh stand up to Trump? If the nominee for chairman of the Federal Reserve values his place in history, he must confound his skeptics and not bow to the president on interest rates. So this fool's supposedly going to be the one that's going to replace Jerome Powell. But the duck been putting pressure on Jerome Powell to drop the interest rate. But Jerome Powell said that's not in the best interest of the people. So he wants to replace him and put somebody that's going to bow down, you know, increase the interest rate, and just make your life a living hell. He's not here to help you out, man. He's here to fulfill prophecy. That's it. And the prophecy that he wants to fulfill is in Revelation, the 6th chapter, where he's going to cost a day's pay for some bread. So imagine the cost of all your other goods. You know, in Revelation, the 11th chapter, you know, verse 14, where it talks about World War III, he's kicking off things like that. And Revelation 17, where it talks about the beast shall hate the whore. All right. So he's Simon in Revelation 13 with the MOTB. So he's doing a lot of work. He's doing a great job, as a matter of fact. He got everything is, and he's signing off all types of laws so the police can get away with anything they do to you. So your discernment got to be up. Your walk has to be strengthened, because this devil got a lot of snares coming down the road. And if you ain't already operating under the wisdom and knowledge of the Lord, and you're going to fall into the pit. It says if the U.S. Congress endorses Kevin Warsh's appointment as chairman of the Federal Reserve, many expect that the previously hawkish Warsh will bow to President Donald Duck's demand for lower interest rates. That matters for Australia, either forcing the RBA to follow suit or accept the loss of international competitiveness through a higher exchange rate. Which Warsh will we see? The hawk or the dove? Probably the hawk. Kevin Warsh had to sound dovish to remain in the race for Fed chairmanship. Is there any Duck appointee who is not a sycophant? Let's look at this word, sycophant. Apostle Gabar goes into this a lot. A sycophant, a person who acts obscurously towards someone important in order to gain advantage. A flatterer, a creep, a flunky. Yeah, that's what he is. Now, I don't know if that's what he is. You got to play your role. You might, what's the word I'm looking for? Ponder? No, I don't think it's pander. I think it's when you pander to someone's needs. That's what politicians, that's the tactic they use. They pander to your needs. Pander, what's this mean? Gratify or indulge in a moral or distasteful desire, need, or habit, or person with such a desire. Pandering meaning. Pandering, what is meaning for a politician? Maybe you can give me a good example. Pandering in politics is the act of a politician telling different audiences exactly what they want to hear rather than adhering to consistent principles solely to gain votes, donations, or support. It involves catering to the base desires or biases of specific groups, often resulting in insincere, self-serving, and superficial policy promises. So you don't know until they get into the seat. He might tell Duck, yeah, I'll do this and do that, and then get in there and do the exact opposite. You don't know until they're empowered. That's just like the Duck. Duck said in 24 hours, the war in Ukraine will end. You can watch the news today. Ukraine, Kiev just got like set on fire. No one even wants to hear about Kiev anymore. They desensitized to it. News on Ukraine. Ukraine war briefing. Zelensky says Russian energy sites are legitimate targets. Russia accuses Ukraine of role in failed assassination of general in Moscow. So, assassination attempts. So, once he gets in, so what brought that up to say that the Duck didn't stop the war in 24 hours. He lied. He got into office. He ain't do nothing to help out anybody. All he did was he's been getting closer with Israel. That's it. Giving them more rights over you Americans, for them to do what's in their best interest, which is against your interests, like fighting Iran and giving them more money. He just made another bill for $6.7 billion. You were concerned about him giving money to Ukraine. Now he giving even more money to Israel. He just signed a $6.7 billion deal with Israel on giving them weapons and things like that. And what do you think they're going to use those weapons against? They're going to want to fight. Get into more wars, cause more mischief. And you don't want any of those things. And he's taking away your jobs. Building more data centers, building more detention centers. So when you're disobedient, when this new system starts to get in place, he got somewhere you could lay your head if you want to disagree with him. It says, but put in context, Warsh's changing advocacy makes sense. His clearest call for higher rates was in the years of following the 2008 global financial crisis, beginning in 2010. The U.S. economy was in clear recovery, but the Fed kept nominal interest rates at zero, substantially negative in inflation-adjusted terms until late in 2015. Warsh argues that this negative rate was distortionary for investment, fostering mergers and share buybacks rather than real investment. Not only did the Fed maintain negative real interest rates, but it continued its bond buying, adding liquidity to the financial system. This bond buying made sense during the nadir of the GFC. The financial sector was teetering on the brink of collapse. So they're trying to blame the Fed chair for withholding back the interest rate in 2008. They think they could have done a lot better. They were trying to blame the financial collapse on the Fed chair back then, when you had predatory loans on houses. When who was president then? Was that Obama? They were giving these loans, so even if you had bad credit, they would turn around and give you a loan for the house. That's not gonna, they call it a sub loan, some shit like that. I forgot that. I can't explain it, but they basically was giving people loans to houses that they couldn't even pay for. So I don't know. So what happens is you end up moving in, and then you can't afford it. And I think part of the deal was you had to have this like flexible interest rate. So the interest rate went up, and you had to foreclose. And I don't know what it did to the people, but I know it caused the housing market to it was like a bubble. So they're trying to put some of that blame on the Fed chair, but it has everything to do with your government. Jerome Powell is probably an honest person, but those are far and few in between. You know, he might be an Edomite too, but some Edomites ain't, like every Edomite ain't the same, man. Some of them actually, you know, just want to do their job correctly, and just like most people just want to do their job correctly, but there's always some asshole trying to make you mess up, and that's what's going on. U.S. economy was in clear recovery. I just read that. Not only did the Fed maintain negative real interest rates, but it continued its bonding buying. I read that. The Fed's bond buying followed the tradition of Walter Baggett, lending freely to support a failing banking system. But by 2010, this danger had passed, and the continued bond purchases, dubbed quantitative easing, loaded the bank's balance sheets with reserves without this triggering commercial lending, as there was little demand from Main Street borrowers. The banks found other ways of putting their excess reserve to profitable use to fund short-term loans used by hedge funds to speculate on small arbitrage opportunities in financial markets, picking up dimes in front of streamrollers. The Fed went even further. It reduced the risk of these speculative transactions by offering repo facilities and entered the bond market whenever there was a shiver in yields. So going into those damn bonds, instead of tying up all the money in the bonds and try to, stay with the rate of inflation, he's thinking you drop the interest rate, that would allow more people to invest in other aspects of the stock market, which would have prevented the stock market from crashing. But in all actuality, everything was overpriced. So they never talk about the real issues, and they like to beat around the bush about everything. But the real solution is that the righteous got to be in power. That's they did. First of all, money alone is evil and corrupt. So that's number one. They're not fixing that. They want this system to continue. So all of it's wicked as a whole. The dollar's wicked. It's not real money. So that's not even the talking point. So all this bullshit that all these It's all bullshit. The standard is the Bible, and there's none of them are. You won't hear Bible verses coming out in the news. They don't care about the Lord establishing a righteous society. They want to fix and band-aid, and they want to heal Babylon, but you can't. It would have been healed. How many presidents haven't been able to fix this place? They just keep kicking it down the road. Eventually it's going to snap, it's going to break, just like the Lord said, because it's wicked. He says the Fed's actions are too data-driven. By this, he seems to be saying that the daily focus on the latest statistical release with the financial commentary making breathless predictions of the policy reaction is counterproductive. Whatever, I'm not reading all of that. But that's your new Fed chair, if he might get in there. Mr. Kevin Warsh. And he's going to determine, the Lord might use him to bring forth Revelation, the 6th chapter, where inflation starts to skyrocket. Revelation 6 and 7. No, Revelation 6 and 5. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see, and behold, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. When you look at the word balances, it goes in the zygos. Let's go into it real quick. Zygos in the Greek, it says a yoke that is put on drought cattle, used of any burden or bondage. So that's what inflation is. It's a burden, it's a bondage. Okay, eventually it's going to break to the point where they're going to hit you with the universal basic income as that of slavery. Okay, that's a form of slavery by making everything around you cost more. Just like in Egypt. He had you get more brick, something like that. Making it harder for you. I forgot what it is. Let me see. Let me jump over there real quick. Exodus 1. And 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more than and mightier than we. So they knew not Joseph. So meaning, because Joseph saved Egypt. Joseph was the reason why Egypt was even prospered. You read Genesis, the 47th chapter, it goes into how he brought all the people's land, and he interpreted Pharaoh's dream. He knew that there was a famine coming. He prepared for it. But then years later, so there was a time where, we were pretty much doing all right, But then a new Pharaoh rose up, a new king over Egypt, just like now. And he said unto his people, Exodus 1 and 9, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. So this new king started looking at the nation of Israel, started seeing how they were prospering. Okay, just like how the duck looks at Israel today. Jake looked better than Esau. A lot of Jake's prospering in this time, man. They're so comfortable that they're super comfortable. There's some Jakes they've been able to prosper for too long, and they're doing better than Edomites in this place. And that's what's the duck is using to gather his base. Like, nah, we gonna make this place great again. We gonna get the DEI initiatives. Get a lot of people losing their jobs, and he's cleaning all that up. He's not really doing it, but he according to his base, they think he's doing that. But ain't gonna be any jobs for them either. Exodus 1 verse 10, come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, so get them up out of the land. So it looked like he's trying to get them out of the land too. Okay? He want to suppress your votes. He's just coming up against you. Exodus 1 and 11. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pitnam and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. So that's what inflation is going to do. That's why when you look into that word zygos, it goes into hard bondage. Okay? Any burden or bondage as that of slavery. Okay, so they were making him do more work. Nowadays, he just inflates your money. Okay, so he does the when you purchase things, shrinkflation and all that. He has all these means of making you work harder for this and pay more for the same amount of goods. It's putting more of a burden on you. Okay, so that's what Zygos is going into. Let me grab this in the book of Judith. Judith chapter 5. Verse 11. Therefore the king of Egypt rose up against them and dealt subtly with them and brought them low with laboring in brick and made them slaves. So that's the slavery that we were going through. So that's a form of slavery. Inflation is a form of slavery. Then they cried unto their God, and he smote all the land of Egypt with incurable plagues. So the Egyptians cast them out of their sight. And that's pretty much it. But it's just going more so into the word zygos, because it says as that of slavery. So it's showing you we were slaves in Egypt, just like we're slaves today. Troublesome laws imposed on one, and that's what he's doing. Putting tariffs, he's doing all manner of all types of policies and decrees. They hurt Esau, but they hurt you Jakes even more. But the difference between you and Esau is that Esau got 500 plus years he's sitting on, so you're a little more wealthier than you, so he can hold out a little bit longer than you. So you Jakes, that's why, like for example, when the government shut down for 43 days, look at how you so-called, well, I didn't really see Native Americans, but I'm sure all the tribes were afflicted like that. But you saw a lot of videos of so-called black woman saying she gonna steal from this grocery store in order to feed her family. You know, so 43 days and you out of your mind. But Esau ain't gotta worry about that. He can probably last a year or two. You know, he probably got at least a year's pay just in the cut that can pay off all of his bills and keep him fed for the year. But then after that, he don't have any integrity. You know, when he starts getting low on his funds, he might start looking at his sword as a way out. It says of the Mosaic law, hence the name is so transferred to the commands of Hamashiach as to contrast them with the commands of the Pharisees, which were a veritable yoke. So that's another thing. The commands of the Pharisees or the commands of the Lord, he's gonna put the burden on you. It's gonna make it harder because he's gonna tell you to take the MOTB. All right, but it tells you in the book of Matthew. So you're gonna take somebody's yoke, but this is what's gonna show you who you belong to at the end of the day. Matthew 11 and 25, it says, "Come to me." At that time, Yahweh Shai answered and said, "I thank thee, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because thou hast hid these things from the wise and prudent and hast revealed them unto babes." Ultimately talking about the elect in this word. Matthew 11 and 26, "Even so, Father, for so it seemed good in thy sight. All things are delivered unto me of my Father, and no man knoweth the Son but the Father, neither knoweth any man the Father save the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him. So that's right. So this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, whoever the Lord, if he allows you, it's all a gift to have this word. Matthew 11:28, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So you're not going to have any rest in this world. He going to give you, he going to make it seem like it's a pseudo rest. He going to tell you, yeah, I'm going to allow you to eat. I'm going to give you a bunch of credits. You can take care of your family. I'm going to give you rest. Right? But it comes with you getting put to death. Okay? And we are heavy laden, we're laboring, and we only get rest in His truth. Matthew 11:29, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. So you got to take His yoke and learn of Him. That yoke is easy, but it kind of isn't when you get in all of these. It is easy. He's not asking you to sacrifice your son. He's not telling you to drink blood and eat human meat, okay? But He does require that you seek Him, that you learn of Him, because you need to be built up for the times that are coming. If you ain't built up in this truth and your mind get occupied with this, that, and the third, then that might be enough to overthrow you. And you need to be built up through the Spirit to make it through any of the tribulations that we're going to get through, that we have to go through. Matthew 11:30, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So the yoke of learning of Him is easy and the burden is light. Okay, ultimately He's going to teach you how to walk in the law, statutes, and commandments and keep your faith. Okay, by constantly trusting in Him, you always have that washing of your mind with this word. All right. It says, yet even Hamashiach's commands must be submitted to, though easier to be kept. So let's go on into Zygos. It's ultimately a test to break you. All this inflation, all these different afflictions, it's all part of the struggle, part of the trial of your faith. Revelation 6:6, and I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. So a measure of wheat for a penny. Okay, let's actually get this in the NLT. Revelation 6:6 in the NLT. And I heard a voice from among the 4 living beings say, a loaf of wheat bread or 3 loaves of barley will cost a day's pay. So a loaf of bread gonna cost a day's pay. How much do you tip that can go? That can mean bread can cost over $250. That's about a day's pay. Maybe, I don't know what people make, what's considered a day's pay. I say about $250 on average. Probably less than that. That's how much bread's gonna cost. So imagine if bread costs that much with eggs and milk and all that other shit gonna cost. Water and things like that, and you ain't gonna have any clean water. All right, especially with all your water's based on electrical, the society running properly. Once that gets tampered with, your water will be contaminated, and that's part of the plagues of Egypt. Moses turned the water into blood. You couldn't drink that water. So contaminated water. How are you going to survive all this? The Lord's going to guide you through all of it. And it says, and don't waste the oil, olive oil and wine. So the olive oil and the wine is this word. Hurt not the oil and the wine, meaning it tells you in the KJV, hurt not the oil and the wine. And the Lord preserved this word this whole time. He's preserved His word. So it wasn't hurt. So that's prophecy within itself. The fact that you can open your Bible That alone is the fact that the Bible is here is a miracle within itself. And it's been here the whole time. The Bible been here. The Lord ain't never. That's a sign of Him not forsaking you. Out of all the things that change in this world, I mean, there's different translations. That's a stumbling block to some people. But the KJV is probably the best. You gotta. It's not probably. It is the best. You gotta master that. But people don't like the words. But that's how you get all the prophecies correct. You start going into these other translations without having that strong foundation in the KJV. Make you go off. I want to read about this. Senior Russian officer shot in Moscow in apparent assassination attempt. So it don't sound like this is escalating. You start shooting senior Russian officers, that comes with some backlash, man. Putin probably speaks to him directly. And if he's getting touched, that put fear on Putin. You just bomb my house. You're shooting people that I talk with on a day-to-day. I already increased my security to the max. And y'all ain't doing. So I'm going to start putting some of your security at risk. And that's what's going to happen. An unidentified individual has shot Lieutenant General Alexeyev in the Russian capital before fleeing the scene, authorities say. And I heard a little bit about this. I think they ran to like the UAE or something like that. A senior Russian military official has been hospitalized after being shot several times in Moscow, according to state media quoting Russian officials. An unknown assailant carried out a gun attack on Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyev, deputy chief of Russian military intelligence, in a residential building. Svetlana Petrenko, spokesperson for the Russian Investigative Committee, said on Friday. So, more assassination attempts. And Babylon got something to do with it, man. Ukraine needs all this help, all this military support, all this intelligence, and where do you think that's coming from? So, I want to be surprised. Well, I can't say I want to be surprised. Don't be surprised when he starts bombing this place. Just like the Nord Stream pipeline, that got blown up. Ukraine got blamed for that. They try to blame it on somebody else. There's no way in hell. If I think, if we know that it's Babylon, I'm sure Putin knows it's Babylon too. And he probably got all types of pictures and photos. So, well, I can't say it's Babylon specifically because this place is compromised, man. Some of that oil might have been to help, obviously, help Russia be in America's interest, but it could be Israel's interest too. Who knows? Alexeyev is deputy chief of the main directorate of the general staff at the Ministry of Defense. And that's the irony of that. He's the general staff at the Ministry of Defense, but he's taking 7 bullets. Petrenko told reporters that a criminal investigation has been opened for attempted murder and illegal trafficking in firearms regarding the incident, according to the Interfax news agency. She said the shooting attack took place in a building, Volokhorazmic Highway in Moscow, and the suspect fled the scene. The victim was hospitalized at one of the city hospitals, Petrenko said, adding that investigators and forensic experts are currently working at the scene of the incident, reviewing security camera footage and questioning witnesses. Okay. Did Putin say anything about it? It is clear that the military commanders and high-level specialists are at risk during wartime. So, said Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. But it is not the Kremlin that should be deciding how to ensure their safety. This is a matter for the special services. Woo! So Alexiev was one of the officials sent to negotiate with the late leader of Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who led a rebellion against Moscow in 2023 and was later killed in a plane crash, which many observers blamed on President Vladimir Putin. So Putin ain't nothing to mess with. It says a series of assassinations. Al Jazeera's Yula, whatever, reporting from Moscow, said there has been a surge of assassinations against Russian high-ranking military officials in Russia since the start of the war in Ukraine. So that's some high-level shit right there, man. Trying to take out the head, try to set up regime change and shit. They asked Duck, do you think you would do that in Russia? And he kind of hinted like he would do some shit like that. But it's prophesied for the Medes to dash your host to pieces. Almost in all those cases, the Ukrainian intelligence services were said to be behind all these assassinations or assassination attempts, she said. Since the start of war in 2022, Ukrainian military intelligence has claimed responsibility for assassinating several senior Russian officers, some of whom have appeared on a public list of Ukraine's enemies. The most recent officer to be killed was the head of the General Staff's Army Training Directorate, Lieutenant General Fennel Savarov, who was killed by a bomb under his car on December 22. I remember that. There was another one. They set up a bomb in a scooter and blew one of them up, man. I think that did get him. I'm not sure. I can't remember. There's so many different assassination attempts, but they happen so many times. It'd be a new general tomorrow. But that's war. That's war, and the Duck was going through that too over here. Multiple, at least 3 that I can remember. Maybe 3.5. They caught one before he was planning on doing something. So that's what's going on in the world. Last month, a Russian court sentenced an Uzbek man to life in prison for the 2024 killing of the head of Russian Army's radiological, chemical, and biological defense forces. So this is beyond the military. I mean, different scientists and shit getting killed, man. General Igor Kirillov was killed when a booby-trapped scooter, that's what I was talking about, exploded as he left an apartment block in Moscow in an attack Kiev said it had orchestrated. So that was a highly sophisticated move, man. So all of this is more escalation. All right, none of this shit's gonna get better. If you think like that, man, you ain't being circumspect. I found this stupid. It said anti-ICE protesters attacked their own supporter with sex toys during Minneapolis rally. I was watching. They're throwing dildos at a car. Dude's putting dildos on his head. These people are out of their minds, man. So we getting to that point, man. This place is going to be destroyed. But I'm into here. Lord's will, this is edifying. Shalom.